Cool.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Kettering Borough Council Planning Committee this evening. Welcome to members, officers and members of the public watching us on YouTube. And please note that this is a virtual meeting through Zoom, so if we do encounter any technical issues this evening, please be patient. We'll do our very best to get those resolved as soon as we can. And just make everyone aware, I will make sure that everyone who is due to speak will be called by the name, whether that is officers, members of the committee or public speakers this evening. And I'm now going to explain the protocol for each item on the agenda this evening as follows. So we'll firstly start with an officer update, then we'll have the officer report where they will share the screen and present the report. We'll hear from our speakers in order present on the speakers list. We'll have a member debate where members get a chance to debate each application. I will then state the planning officer's recommendation on each application to be voted upon. We'll seek a proposer and seconder, after which Eden will conduct a vote for each member where they will confirm whether they're for, against or abstain on each application. And once that decision has been reached, I will state that decision. We'll move on to the next item. So can I turn now to Eden, please, to conduct the register for everyone attending this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So far, if I just run through the names that I've got down, if I've missed anyone off, just feel free to shout. So we've got David Pope, committee host, myself as committee administrator. We have the chair, Councillor Ash Davies, Councillor Mark Rowley, Councillor Scott Edwards, Councillor Clark Mitchell, Councillor Linda Adams, Councillor Mark Deering, Councillor Greg Titcombe, Councillor Jan O'Hara and Councillor Cliff Morton. We have Teresa Nichol and James Wilson from Planning and Emma Granger from Legal.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Callum. Eden, autopilot there. Sorry about that. So can we have any apologies, please, Eden?
Sorry, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Thurland and Councillor Stanton.
Thank you very much indeed. And I believe Councillor Edwards and Councillor Deering are acting as substitutes. Do we have any declarations of interest at all, members, please? If you could state that now.
Yes, Chair. 5.1 is a relative of my wife, so I won't be taking part.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor. And for myself on item 5.1, the applicants are known to me. So we move to our minutes on the meeting of the 22nd of September 2020, as read in the agenda paper. Is everyone happy to sign that as a true record? Agreed. Thank you very much. I will sign that shortly. So I have no urgent items. So we move to our speakers list this evening, and we have two speakers on item 5.2, KT 2020-0347, 24 Barlows Lane, Wilbarston. So we've got Baxter Horton, who's the third party objector, who'll be joining us by video. And we have Councillor Nick Richards from Wilbarston Parish Council, who will also be joining us by video. So both speakers have 3 minutes this evening, and that decides the order. So we'll take item 5.2 first, then item 5.1, because there are no speakers on that. So let's conclude item 5.2, KT 2020-0347, 24 Barlows Lane in Wilbarston.
Both of our speakers are now in the waiting room, Chair, so I'm just going to bring up the presentation.
So Dave's just going to show the screen for the report, and then we do actually have an update on this as well. So I don't know if the planning officer wishes to start reading that first, just while David gets ready for the report.
Yep.
Okay, so that is ready for that item. So ready for officer update and officer report. Teresa, are you there?
Teresa?
Can you hear us, Teresa?
Report? You need to unmute, Teresa. Bottom left.
Sounds like she's trying.
There we go.
Is that okay?
Yep.
Sorry, I was pressing unmute, but it wasn't doing anything.
Not a problem, Teresa. So good to go with the update and report when you are ready.
Okay, so the update is that objection comments have been received from 26 Barlows Lane on the 30th of October. After looking at the amended plans that we'd received on the 7th and 12th of October, In summary, the occupiers of 26 have stated that the reported separation gap between 24 and 26 doesn't take account of their side porch. The width of the proposed new dwelling side access path of 1.56 metres is inadequate. Cross sections still show the new dwelling to be an unacceptable height and massing, and therefore harmful to residential amenities by reason of overlooking privacy. And then it says consider lowering slab level to mitigate this. And JCS policy 9 requires solar panels and rainwater harvesting for new builds. This should be conditioned. And the officer comments on these 4 points are: 1, as commented in the officer report, number 26 doesn't have any habitable room windows facing the new dwelling, and the glazed front porch to the side is also not regarded as a habitable room, where outlook, privacy and loss of light is a concern. Number 2, the width of 1.56 metres is regarded as being adequate for pedestrian and wheelchair access, wheelie bin access, etc. 3, the height and massing of the new dwelling have not changed and were considered acceptable as documented in the officer's report. And with regard to policy 9 of the JCS, the issues relating to solar panels as such relate to commercial buildings. What we can enforce from that policy is the restrictions on water usage, and we're proposing to do that by condition. And that's the update.
Thank you very much, Teresa. So good to crack on with the report when you're all ready.
Okay, so next slide, please. So this is the application site off Barlows Lane in Wilbarston. The proposal is to extend the existing property, number 24, 2 stories to the rear and single story to the side, to create a 4-bedroom dwelling. And then to the north of that dwelling, in the gap to the side between 24 and 26, it's proposed to build a new 2-story dwelling. So the site would be split down the middle into 2 separate dwellings and plots. The site lies just within the Wilbarston Conservation Area. Next slide, please. So this is a survey of the site as existing. In order to facilitate the new dwelling, the existing garage and some outbuildings would need to be demolished. Next slide, please. This is the proposed block plan. The areas in dark grey on the more southerly dwelling, so show the proposed extensions to create the 4-bedroom dwelling. As I said, the extension to the rear is 2-story, and then there's that single-story extension to the side, which you can see on the bottom of the dwelling. And then the new dwelling is above that to the north, in between that dwelling and number 26. It's proposed to create another vehicular access to the front and hard surface the front areas to provide 3 car parking spaces for each dwelling and some turning area. Next slide, please. So this is the existing dwelling as it looks at the moment. It's sort of a 30 style dwelling. As you'll hear later, that there's a variance of different styles along this part of Barlows Lane. Next slide, please. This is the proposed extended existing dwelling. As you can see, there's the 2-story part. If you look on the bottom right-hand plan, the side elevation, you can see the 2-story part extending out and that single-story extension on the side. Next one, please. This is the proposed new dwelling. As you can see, it's got an asymmetrical roof line. The reason that the applicant has designed it in this way is so that there's a stepping up in height between the dormer bungalow that is at 26 Barlows Lane up to an equivalent of the existing ridge height of number 24, the existing dwelling. And you'll see that in the street scene drawing that's coming up. Next one, please. This shows exactly what I was just saying. So on the top plan, the street view plan, the building on the very left of your screen is the massing of number 26. Of course, it doesn't show the detail. You'll see from the photos what that dwelling looks like. So you've got the lower part of the new dwelling adjacent to the neighbouring property. It's the neighbouring property's garage that you can see in between the two. There's approximately 6 metres between the main side wall of number 26 and the proposed side wall of the new dwelling. And then you've got to the right of the new dwelling, the existing dwelling, and you can see that single story extension on the side. Next slide, please. Yeah, this shows the side elevation of the new dwelling as would be facing the neighbouring property at number 26, and the rear elevation of the existing extended house and the new dwelling. Next one, please. This shows you the floor plan and the roof of the extended dwelling. As you can see, it's the extension on the back is creating one of those open plan sort of kitchen diner areas on the ground floor plan on the left. The middle plan shows you the extension providing the bedroom 3 and bedroom 4. Next slide, please. And this is the floor plan layout of the proposed new dwelling. Next one, please. In order to facilitate the additional access, approximately a 4 metre length of the existing brick wall along the frontage would need to be removed. Sorry, it's a 6 metre length. I thought that didn't sound right. I'll discuss that a bit more again later on. Next one, please. This is a view sort of showing how the land levels sit and how the dwelling sits within the levels. The ground slopes upwards from Barlows Lane towards the rear. Next one, please. We've created this plan to show you where the objections have come from. So if you look at the plot number 24, we've shown you the distance between the rear line of where the extension and the rear of the new dwelling will be to the property at the back, number 1, and that is a distance of approximately 33 metres. The distance that you can see there in the other thick red line is the approximate 6 metres between the main side wall of 26 and where the side wall of the new dwelling would be. All the red oval dots are the properties from where the objections have come from. And the distances that you can see in blue in the boxes there indicate the nearest part of the building to the nearest part of the building on the site. So those distances are approximate sort of nearest building to building distances. Next one, please. Okay, so this is looking up Barlows Lane towards the application site. The dormer sort of property that you can see on the left there is the neighbouring property, and you can just see beyond that the roof line of the host property on the application site. As you can see, Barlow's Lane doesn't have any footpaths, but there's several vehicular accesses off it, and there's a mix of different types of materials to the sort of front boundary treatments. Next one, please. Again, this shows you the neighbouring property and this sort of flat roofed building adjacent to that. You can see from this that there is quite an eclectic mix of dwelling types in the immediate vicinity. Next one, please. So this is looking up towards the application site. The garage in the foreground with the light green door belongs to the neighbouring property. Next one, please. This shows you the host dwelling. The garage with the darker green door is proposed to be demolished to facilitate the space to build the new dwelling. As you can see, there's a vehicular access already in that position. Obviously, some of the greenery at the front there, and part of that wall you can see will need to be removed to facilitate the parking areas that are proposed. Next one. As you can see, this is looking straight on, looking at the different, you can see the difference in sort of land levels rising up from this one, and the slight difference in levels between the neighbouring property and the application site. Next one. That pretty much shows you what we've already seen. Next one, please. Yeah, that's looking head on. So you can see this wall there. It's part of this wall that's going to have to be removed to make the vehicular access. You can see how far away the dwelling is to the rear from the front house. Next one. That's where the new dwelling is proposed to sit. I was telling you about the way they've designed the roof so that there's this stepping up, and this illustrates quite well sort of the lower height of the neighbouring property going up to the height of the existing property, and this is why this asymmetric roof design has been chosen. Next one, please. This is taken from within the garden, looking at the side elevation of the neighbours, and as I said, that garage is going to be removed along with some of those outbuildings. Next one, please. This is you can see this porch that the neighbour referred to in their objections in this one. Next one, please. And this is one of the secondary windows that's in the side elevation of the neighbouring property. Next one. This is looking across the back of the neighbouring property from the site. Next. These are the two secondary windows that are in the side elevation of the neighbouring property, and then that brick built part is this porch extension. Next, please. It's another sort of closer view of that, one of those secondary windows between the sheds. Next one. That shows you that there's no windows in the front part of the neighbour's property. Next one. Closer view, that shows you the porch referred to. Next one. That's showing you a bit further up, just past the host property. Next one. That's back showing you the neighbours. As you can see, there's quite a mix, as I said. Next one. This is to show you that this is the BT equipment box. It looks like a sort of rectangular manhole cover, but that's actually hosting some BT equipment, and that's not affected by the proposal. Next one. I think that's pretty self-evident as to what that is. It's showing you the existing side. Next one. Yeah, another one from the front. As you can see, the host dwelling is it's a 1930s style dwelling. Part of the proposal is to re-render the whole thing and paint it white, so it won't appear that sort of brown colour if this development is approved. Next one. That's okay. That's it. Do you just want to go back to one of the photos, please? That it can stay on that one for now. Thank you. So we've had objections from 7 nearby residents, and these are set out on page 16 of the report. What I'll do is I'll just go through the issues, and then I'll come back to those objections and set out why we think those objections either aren't a reason to not approve the application, and how we've overcome some of those issues that have been raised. The Highway Authority did raise some issues, and those are set out in the application on page 50. They didn't raise a direct objection as such, but we also consider that those issues have been overcome by seeking amended plans and some clarification from the agents. As you'll see, there's no objections been raised by environmental health, environmental care, or Anglian Water, or the Environment Agency. In terms of the principle of the development obviously is on garden land. There's nothing in the development plan that precludes building new dwellings on garden land. We don't have a policy as such that prevents this. The NPPF doesn't count garden land as brownfield land, but it doesn't resist development on garden land either. In terms of the Wilbarston parish plan, as it's not a neighbourhood plan, it can't be considered as part of the development plan. It can be considered as a material consideration when looking at this application and weighing things up, but the weight to be apportioned to it is very limited because it's not part of the development plan and it's not a neighbourhood plan. The only sort of reference to garden land in that parish plan is that building on gardens would not generally be welcomed. But taking the development plan and the NPPF, it's considered that the principle of the development is acceptable as long as the detailed matters are acceptable and they're considered from page 18 onwards. We're required to pay special attention to the desirability of preserving or enhancing the appearance of the conservation area. And as I said, the site just lies within the westernmost area of that conservation area. We've considered that the applicant has come up with a design that in terms of scale and massing fits quite well with the scale and massing of the development around it. There are various designs and styles in that area. And so in terms of design, there is not an overriding character. There's older properties and modern properties. And we think in terms of that part of the development, the proposal does preserve and could potentially enhance the conservation area with the improvements to the external appearance of the existing dwelling. The removal of part of the front wall, which has been highlighted as a particular feature of Barlow's Lane, does sort of weigh against the proposal, but the amount of wall being removed is fairly limited. It's i.e. 6 metres in a 27-metre stretch of wall, sorry, a 35-metre stretch of wall. And having said that, there's an additional proposed 27 metres of stone wall being proposed up the side of the existing dwelling, which is a benefit of the proposal. We propose to condition all the materials of the new dwelling and the proposed dwelling, and we are proposing to condition that both properties would have white windows. I'll talk more about the conditions other than that will help the appearance of the development towards the end. In terms of impact on residential amenity, this is set out on page 22. The officers carefully considered the impact in terms of massing, overbearing and overlooking and loss of light on the nearest neighbouring properties. The property most affected is number 26, the neighbouring property. But as you can see, there are only 2 secondary windows in that side elevation. Proposed new dwelling is quite in line with that property. And while we accept there will be some overshadowing, this is not to an extent that warrants recommendation of refusal of the application. And we think that the degree of light and privacy being maintained for that property is acceptable. In terms of the properties to the rear, as I said, with the new dwelling and the extension, there would still be approximately 33 metres gap between the rear of the proposed and the existing property at the back. And I'd hasten to add that they are actually one of the neighbours who haven't raised objections to the proposal. We've looked at how it impacts any other nearby properties, and we think the level of impact on any other properties is acceptable. We've had plans that show that the proposed parking and the proposed visibility splays are acceptable and provide adequate parking to serve each dwelling. The pedestrian visibility is acceptable. There's no impact on that BT box, and we can't find any highway reasons that would warrant recommending refusal of the application. There's some comments being made with regard to biodiversity and landscaping. We questioned the agent about the issue of the loss of this pond, but we couldn't find evidence that the pond actually still exists. And in any event, it was just a very small garden pond. Nevertheless, we are proposing landscaping conditions and a condition requiring bat and bird boxes to help improve biodiversity on the site. There were comments raised about a potential stream running across the front of the site and issues to do with surface water. So we consulted the EA and Anglian Water, and they've not raised any issues in this regard, and we can't find any evidence that there is a stream in this location. With regard to sustainable buildings, we're proposing to put the standard condition on, which would limit water use at the new property. If we go back to the page where the neighbour objections are set out, you can see that bullet point list on page 16. In terms of massing and density, we consider that the scale of the buildings and the height and the density is not at odds with the pattern of development in that area. There's a mixture of large plots, but there's also several smaller plots within that area. We've set out how we think the character and appearance of the conservation area is being preserved. With regard to parking and highway safety, those issues have been dealt with. There's 3 parking spaces for each property and their visibility space are acceptable. We've assessed it with regard to residential amenity, and we consider that the proposals aren't providing any undue overbearing privacy or overlooking onto any neighbouring properties. There will be some loss of the historic wall, but there will also be a new 27-metre length of new wall using the old stone and new stone to match. The loss of trees and hedgerows to the front is not considered significant, and we would be requiring a new landscape scheme. The issue of the stream has been dealt with. The issue of foul sewerage connection will be dealt with under the building regs. With regard to construction noise, we're proposing condition 2, which limits the hours of construction, and that would be standard hours. I've discussed that the Wilbarston Parish plan carries very limited weight compared to the development plan. The pedestrian accesses are perfectly acceptable and wide enough to get bins down, cycles down, and all that sort of thing. The proposals meet the sustainable building construction policy, especially if we put in the water limitation condition on. As I said, the EA have not raised any objections. I've discussed the issue of the potential loss of pond, and we've received amended plans with the heights on, and they're the plans that I've showed you, showing the ground levels, showing how the heights fit in with the neighbouring properties, and we're happy that those plans are accurate. So there are, in our view, no reasons to recommend approval. So we recommend, refusal. So we're recommending approval, and that's subject to all the conditions set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Teresa, for that very detailed presentation there. So we've got 2 speakers on this item. So our first speaker is going to be Baxter Horton, who's speaking as a third-party objector. So he'll be joining us very shortly by video. Just connecting to his audio.
Mr. Horton, can you hear us? You need to unmute, sir. Mr. Horton?
Hello.
Hello. We've reached the point of proceedings where you get to address the committee. You've got 3 minutes whenever you're ready, sir.
Thank you very much indeed. Good evening, councillors. Yes, I can.
You need to mute your YouTube stream, otherwise you're going to hear what I was
Okay.
saying 30 seconds ago.
Just a second. Oops. Oops. Oh no, I've gone wrong.
If you give us a thumbs up when you're ready, sir.
Sorry. Can you hear me?
We can indeed. So you have 3 minutes to speak, Mr. Horton, whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. Sorry about that delay.
No problem.
So we reside at 26 Barlows Lane, next door to the site. I'm also representing the 12 other residents who have submitted formal objections. Unsurprisingly, the applicant wishes to maximise investment return by shoehorning a new dwelling into the existing garden gap. This Wait a minute.
We can hear you, sir.
What you need to do is close down your YouTube stream because you're hearing what happened 30 seconds ago. Either close it or mute it, one of the two.
Sorry, it started but then finished. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So if you want to pick up where you left off there.
Okay, sorry, yeah. Unsurprisingly, the applicant wishes to maximise investment return by shoehorning a new dwelling into the existing garden gap. This means that sensible refurbishment of the existing number 24 has been jettisoned in favour of creating two properties. So we have four main objections. Point one, plot density, massing and overshadowing. Remodelling of number 24 with two extensions amounts to a significant increase in living space, but with no garaging. The proposal to squeeze in an additional house between numbers 24 and 26 will result in inadequate separation distances and overdevelopment of the garden. The new layout will only allow for a very narrow side passageway to the main entrance door to be located on the side of the new dwelling, hemmed in by the existing stone boundary wall. This will severely restrict access with larger items, wheelchairs, etc. The scale and height of the new building is excessive in the existing street scene and will overshadow our house. Point number two, loss of privacy and overlooking. The side extension to number 24 brings the property closer to number 23 Barlow's Lane, which will be overlooked by two larger windows and a new window in the master bedroom above it, resulting in the occupier's loss of privacy and amenity. The existing hedge and vegetation which screen the site from number 26 will have to be uprooted, leading to loss of privacy, increased noise and obtrusive overlooking into our conservatory and back garden. The residents strongly believe that a reduction in the building slab height down to the same level as Barlow's Lane would significantly lessen the visual impact and reduce the steepness of the driveway slope. Point three, highways and parking. Northants Highways parking standards require 3 parking spaces plus a visitor space for 4-bedroomed houses, but the drawings only designate 3 spaces. Visitors will inevitably park on narrow Barlow's Lane, causing traffic congestion and compromising safety. Point four, sustainability. The design and access statement suggests future owners could install solar panels and an underground rainwater harvesting system. Why aren't the developers committing to eco-friendly resources at construction stage? What about including electric car or bike charging point, air source heat pump, low carbon heating, etc.?
I'll ask you to sum up, please, sir.
To sum up, the proposed development will neither preserve nor enhance the conservation area. Instead, we consider that the alternative proposition to solely develop the existing property would provide for a well-positioned family home with all the amenities and positive impacts that the village would wish to see in new developments. Please refuse the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your contributions this evening. So the meeting will carry on YouTube, so you'll be able to view it there.
Thank you.
Dave's just going to pop you back in the waiting room. There we go. So that was Baxter Horton there. And we have another speaker, Councillor Nick Richards from Wilbaston Parish Council, who is just about to join us now.
Can you hear us, Councillor? You need to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Certainly can. 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Okay. Right. Good evening, councillors. My name is Nick Richards. I'm speaking on behalf of Wilbaston Parish Council. We oppose this. I won't go into a lot of repeat detail, but 2 or 3 points. Our parish plan's been mentioned and we're aware of its legal status, but at the time it did draw together the views of about 2/3 of the households of the village, and so it represents what we think. We're not NIMBYs. We'd be happy, I think, to see an appropriate renovation and possibly extension of the existing house, but we do look for appropriate quality, and there's also a fear about the effect on traffic movement in the village. This is not appropriate. The points have been made. It will produce quite a big mass sitting about 2 yards above road level. The houses are close together. That's typical of that road, but it's very rare to have actually a major doorway in one of those narrow gaps. They're usually blank walls or small windows. I think the slide that was shown earlier showed it perfectly. At the moment, it's unkempt because it's been empty, but we have an old stone wall, vegetation behind it, and then behind that a house. What we'll have there on that edge of the conservation area, if this goes ahead, is no stone wall, no vegetation, two modern frontages close together at height, and in between hard standing and 6 parked cars. We'll lose a rural scene and gain something which will probably look like a small hotel. The other point, which I think was misunderstood, we raised concerns over access, not between the properties and the road, but between Barlow's Lane itself and School Lane. There's only really practically one access, and that goes onto a right angle bend on the B road right by the entrance to the school. So twice a day during school time, that road is absolutely not impassable, passable with care, with parked cars everywhere, including in the bottom of Barlow's Lane, children on the road, parents trying to keep control of them. We object to anything which is going to increase traffic movements in and out of that potentially dangerous junction. And the second property here will add 3 cars, plus these days, of course, numerous courier van movements as online shopping, etc., is delivered. It's just not safe. So we're not opposed to this site being delivered. We'd like to see this site brought back to life, but we really believe we can do a lot better than this, and we ask you to turn it down.
Thank you very much indeed for your contributions there, sir. Dave's just going to put you back in the waiting room, and the meeting carries on YouTube, so you'll be able to see the end of the debate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. There we go. So that concludes our speakers for this item. Thanks, David. So over to you, members, for the debate. And I currently see no hands wishing to speak. Okay, so if no one does wish to speak, this is your last chance. Councillor Titcombe, please. Can I ask people to use their blue hands just so it's easier for me to see who wants to discuss?
Thank you, Chair. I couldn't get to the bit quick enough. I wasn't. I'm still scribbling a little bit. I do have a couple of concerns. One is the wall taking 6 metres down. That's a fair chunk of a very old wall. Very early. From a look at the material in there, it's 100+ years old. The repair work on the top of it, I think, judging from the type of build on it, it's they did have upright soldiers on it at one time, but it's been levelled off with the material. It looks like just before the First World War. But enough of that nonsense. It is a conservation area. I've got some concerns with it, the same as the parish council there. I'll share some of their views. Back garden development, well, not exactly the back garden, it's the side garden, but Will Barson, very old place in some cases. It is very crowded. There are houses there you can't park a car against. Most of it built out of ironstone, and now we do get further out, which is brick, modern brick. I'm debating with myself whether I'm going to support this or not. Not happy there. As for painting, having a re-render and paint it white, I think that might be a bit glaring. If we could go, perhaps choose another colour there. Yeah, thank you, Chair. I will make a decision in a few minutes, but thank you for that, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Titcombe. Councillor O'Hara, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few questions. Thank you for a brilliant report, Teresa, and the plans were really superb, so thank you for that. Just a few questions. Can I ask you, what, you know, the water course that's running under the site, how is that being addressed? Because obviously the water table's rising, the more building that comes along, the water table is rising across the country. So, so how is that addressed in terms of, you know, that them now going to build another house on there or hoping to? And the other thing I wanted to ask was, where they're building the new house, and it's going to be a new 4-bedroom house, therefore it's going back quite a long way, running in parallel with it. And I understand it's a step design. But how is that going to work in terms of getting the access down the side? Because they've done that to a house not far from myself, and it causes massive problems in terms of the runoff from the house. There isn't a soakaway, and then runoff from the house is causing the path to fluctuate, and such that the water all runs into the adjacent property now. So that wasn't really thought about at the time, but has caused a problem now. It's caused a problem with damp for the adjacent property. And I think I do have a concern really with the density of housing. You know, a lot of the housing in Woolbaston has been not ad hoc, but it's a traditional old village with, you know, traditional stone built buildings that they weren't planned. It's not like Milton Keynes where you've got a concentric pattern, you know, on a gridiron pattern. It's a village, and I think we need to be mindful of that, you know, as the councillor has said, and obviously residents have said. And it is a very busy village when you're trying to get through there at school time. I know that's twice a day, but it's still twice a day, you know, 6 weeks at a time. So I do have concerns of building another house instead of just extending what is a nice family home. Not planning reasons as such, but obviously the density of housing is, but obviously we've tried to address it. But I just really would like confirmation over what's happening with the stream and the watercourse, and because of the differing levels, is that going to affect it? Because obviously they don't have the ability to have a soakaway there, which normally on new builds you would hope to see, and you'd be able to have a displacement of water. So
okay, thanks, Councillor. Therese, did you want to clarify on that regarding drainage?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't find evidence that there is a stream or water course across the front, and we consulted the Environment Agency and Anglian Water, and they didn't come up with one on their records either. So we just don't have the evidence that there is a stream or water course there. With regard to the access down the side, I would go to page 25C on your report, and that sort of shows you the width of the access down the side of the new dwelling. You know, it's not that narrow, it's quite substantial down, you know, as a pedestrian walkway down the side of that dwelling. And if you look at page 25A, which is the location plan, in terms of the density, if you look at 26, 27, 28 and 30 Barlow's Lane right next to the plot, none of them have got a significant access way down the side of the dwelling. They're all quite adjacent to each of those plots. So I can't really see in that term, in terms of density and how they sit next to each other, it's in keeping with that row of properties. Admittedly, when you look elsewhere in the plan, there's different shaped plots and some of the properties are quite well spaced out. But it's very different. There isn't any sort of uniform pattern along there. But this certainly isn't, I would say, at odds with the pattern of the neighbouring dwellings, and they're the ones that were in the photo, the more modern dwellings. In terms of traffic, the Highway Authority hasn't raised any objections about an increase in the amount of traffic that a single dwelling would bring. And although like villages such as Woolbaston, all villages where there's a primary school tend to be busy at those sort of hours, I think we would find it very difficult to substantiate that traffic generated by one new dwelling is going to be so adverse that it's going to have a sort of impact that would warrant refusal of the application. Yes, with regard to the loss of the bit of the wall, as I said, that does count against the proposal. But then in terms of length of wall, the applicant is proposing to build a wall up the side next to Water Close, which would be a benefit and which would appear better than what that boundary looks like at the moment. So yes, there's a bit of that counts against it, but then they're building a new bit out of stone that will count in favour. You know, but that's quite a subjective view. On the whole, we don't consider that loss of wall is so detrimental that it harms the character and appearance of the conservation area.
Thank you, Teresa. Councillor Edwards, please.
Thank you. It's just a little bit about the wall, actually. So the removal of the wall, or part of the wall, sorry, but they are replacing a new wall up the side. Is that wall going to be in keeping with the remainder of the front of the wall? Is that something we can ask to happen? Because I have to say, I do quite like the design of the old wall, and it is in keeping with that area. So if we can have the side wall kind of the same design development as the front wall, is that possible?
I'm just checking what conditions we've got on. Well, they've got to, condition 4 requires them to submit a scheme for the boundary treatment, and it's got to include details for the reconstruction of the boundary wall along Barlow's Lane and details for a stone boundary wall along the site's Orchard Close boundary. They've got to include plans and elevations of what that will look like. If you were to recommend approval and you thought it was important that the design matches that of the front wall, then that is something that we could require. You could either specify that and add that to the condition, or we could put it on as a note and say that the expectation with condition 4 is that the new wall will match in design and style the existing wall.
Yeah, I think I'd quite like that in there, because I mean, the last thing I want is then you kind of like a normal brick wall being put up the side, which is completely not in keeping with that area. So kind of keep some of that heritage that is currently there. I'd quite like that put into it, if that's possible, Chair.
I think if that satisfies members' concerns, Teresa, that would be useful to have to make that condition more robust, I think. So, Councillor Morton, did I see your hand go up briefly before I call Councillor Deering? You're muted, Councillor.
I'll have a little word. When I look at the new building, it seems an awful lot of wall on both sides of it, as opposed to the front, with the small windows. And I'm thinking, is it really going to be in keeping with the rest of the properties in the street? And the front door appears to be on the side with a very little gap to the just thinking, is it really, does it fit in there? And, you know, the problem where I have is, you know, planning concerns which are, you know, possible to object against it. I feel a little bit flimsy. You know, it will go there, people can live in it, but does it, to me, does it really fit? But I think, you know, I was looking at the car parking spaces. There's 3 spaces. They said it can't fit a visitor's car. Well, the visitor would just park his car in front of the others on the area they use to get in and out. So I can't think of anything positive. I just think, is it going to look, you know, that awful lot of wall? You look at those 3 little windows on page 25F, and the front door, you know, it's almost like it's all been fitted in. And I think, is it really in keeping with the surroundings?
Thank you very much. Councillor Deering, please.
You need to unmute, Councillor.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Loud and clear, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so, you know, it's an interesting one, this. I've had a good look through it. I've listened to what Teresa has said, and thank you very much for the photographs and that, because that makes it a lot clearer from my point of view. My main concern really goes with Councillor Edwards on this, was that I wouldn't want to see particularly a loss of a stone wall that's, you know, something that's in character with the area. However, the fact that there is a mitigation here, and I go and look at what the paragraph on page 21 tells us, which is that there will be a stone wall approximately 27 metres long, and that it'll be imposed in a condition. I would like Councillor Edwards has said, I would like to see a condition that this is a stone wall that incorporates the stone that's removed, and that there is like for like stone replacing on the whole of the 27 metres, so it looks a lot nicer. So I'd like to see that as a condition.
Thank you for that. Councillor Teresa, can we make sure that is added to, or whether it's an additional or enhanced condition to guarantee that that is a stone boundary?
Yeah, if you were to vote to approve it, then we would beef up the existing condition to say that it has to be stone, and it has to be, when they submit the details, it will have to show that it is matching in design and materials the wall that's on the front.
And where possible, hopefully reuse existing materials where possible.
Yeah, well, they're proposing to reuse the bits that they've taken out, but obviously they're going to need a lot of new stone as well. I mean, it is obviously when it's first built, you're going to notice a difference between the new stone and the old stone. Until the new stone weathers, it's going to look new, but I mean, you can never do anything about that really whenever you're building a new wall. But we can make sure that it's the same sort of coursing, if you like, and the same sized pieces of stone, so that in terms of its design, it looks the same.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to take one final point from Councillor O'Hara, and then I'm going to move to the officer's recommendation. So Councillor O'Hara, do you want to wrap up what you want to say?
Oh, thank you, Chair. It was just really to clarify something, Teresa. Is there any way, because I really don't think that the second building is in keeping with the area. I know Barlows Lane is already very crowded, and I know there's a plethora of designed houses down there. But is there any way, Teresa, you could have it so that the building isn't so austere? Because that essentially is what it is. It's more like a storage area than a home. Could that be built of stone that's in keeping with the area? It would not then look like it's been shoehorned in. Would that be something that we could look at, instead of just having something that was a garage space is now going to be a 4-bedroom house? Because that's essentially, it's just a bit wider than a double garage. What's the width of a double garage essentially? Is that something we could look at?
James, I believe, wants to speak.
Yeah, sorry, I'm defer to Teresa if you want to answer first, and I'll come in afterwards. But from my perspective, this is the application the applicants put forward for determination. So it's not within our gift to be changing the design and the style of the dwelling. Officers have recommended that it's appropriate in terms of its contemporary design for this conservation area, and it's often that contemporary designs can sit very well within a conservation area and with the right materials. And as Teresa said in the presentation, this is a fairly eclectic road of different styles and different materials and so on and so forth. So I don't think that's a possibility, Councillor O'Hara, for us to then require different materials or different style of external, cladding or appearance of the dwelling at this stage.
Thank you, James. Teresa, did you wish to add anything to James' point?
I think they are proposing some timber cladding on this dwelling, and which I think will help soften it, and I think it will look better than what it looks on the drawings. And in the report, actually on page 19, it says within the street there's some pre-existing examples where properties are rendered and have a timber-clad front and side elevations, and it says EG 27. My view is I think it's probably better that they've kept it quite simple, because you sometimes the more sort of twiddly and trying to make something look old, it can end up looking worse than if you go for something quite simple. I think the actual shape of it from the front does achieve its aims, i.e. going from that lower side up to the height of the existing house. And I quite like how they're proposing to make a sort of a feature with the materials of those 2 windows at the front, because that sort of picks up on that double height kind of bay thing on the existing house. So in terms of like the rhythm of the street, I think it fits in. I think then you're getting really into the details of detailed design, and because it's so different along there, I think that's where we're going to get into a difficulty. If it was a sort of, if we were in a bit of the conservation area where there was a very overarching style to the properties, and then someone was going, and they were older, and someone was just proposing to put something very modern in, I think we'd have more of a case there. But I think it's more difficult here because there's such a mix.
Thank you, Teresa. So, Councillor Titcombe, I see your hand is raised. Was that from previous, or would you like to make a very quick point before I move to the vote?
A very quick point, or a suggestion, if you like. Please, if the stonework goes ahead, may I suggest that we did, in the days of me being building traders, use a coating of natural yogurt or sour milk, full fat milk that's just going off. Tends to help the stonework go down a bit. That was it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if we can condition that, but we can certainly suggest it, I'm sure. So therefore, we have an officer's recommendation to approve the application in front of us, clearly with all those conditions added to enhance with regard to all the points we've talked about. So if everyone's happy to proceed, I see no further hands raised. Can I seek a proposer and seconder for the recommendation to approve the application, please?
I'll propose, Chair.
I'll second.
Councillor Edwards, Councillor Deering, thank you. So I'm going to ask Eda now to conduct a vote on the officer's recommendation to approve the application, but with all those additional conditions added to as we've requested.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just go through the names that I have down, and if you just let me know if you're for, against or abstaining. Councillor Rowley.
Councillor Rowley.
Yeah, it's all right. Buttons wouldn't work. 4.
Councillor Edwards.
4.
Councillor Mitchell.
4.
Councillor Adams.
4.
Councillor Deering.
4.
Councillor Titcombe.
Against.
Councillor O'Hara.
Against.
And Councillor Morton.
Against.
Okay, so I have 5, 4 and 3 against, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Eden. So that application is therefore approved. Thank you very much, everyone, for your contributions there. So
I'll be leaving now, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, good evening. Okay, so that moves us to item 5.1 KT 2019-0904, Cobley's Lodge, Stamford Road, Little Oakley. Once again, David's just going to put the presentation on the screen. And we have an officer's update as well.
You may as well do the update, Chair, while I'm wrestling with PowerPoint.
Teresa, did you want to do the update, or?
Yeah. Okay.
I can read it if needs be.
Yeah, the update is the agents confirmed by an email that the applicants are the freehold owners of the farm, the agricultural holding, and the land upon which the temporary mobile home is located. The farm comprises just over 31 hectares of land around the mobile home. Cobley Lodge Farm, House and Buildings, and the Harkers Barkers Dog Kennel Complex. Accordingly, within the site description section of the Officers Committee report, the first line is amended to read: the application site comprises the access and immediate area on which the temporary dwelling sits. The application site is within a larger agricultural holding owned by the applicant family. The site's within the open countryside to the north of Geddington and to the south of Little Oakley, and is accessed from the A43 Kettering to Corby Road. And that's the update.
Thank you very much, Teresa. David's just going to pop the presentation on the screen.
Okay.
There we go, Teresa. That is good to go for the presentation.
Thank you. There we are. So that's we've highlighted the site because it's a little bit unclear. The site area, as I've just said, includes the access way from the main road, and then it goes up and it goes around the existing temporary dwelling and a small area of land around that forms the current garden to that dwelling. And the site sits within the complex of Cobley's Lodge Farm, and the 31 hectares of land around that forms part of the agricultural holding. Next one, please. That's just another location plan showing the same thing, and as you can see, it's highlighted where the mobile home currently sits. At the bottom there, we've highlighted where the one objector lives in relation to this site, and that sort of little triangle where that arrow points to is the bottom of their garden. The house fronts onto the main road. Next one, please. This is a bit closer up, showing there's quite a large complex of various farm and dog kennel buildings there. And the area hatched there is the position of the existing temporary mobile home that is proposed to remain there for another 5 years. Next one, please. That one's pretty much the same, so we'll carry on. This is the existing mobile home. As you can see, it's like a wooden sort of structure, 2 bedrooms. Next one, please. There it is in photo. Next one, please. There it is from the other view, and that little area next to it is used as garden to that dwelling. And there's the garden area sitting within the wider agricultural holding. Next one, please. That just shows it from another view. Do you want to go back to that one? Basically, the son of the person who owns the farm lives in this property, and he runs the dog kennels that are existing there. We've had information submitted to show that the worker is still required to be on site to help look after the animals that are housed in the dog kennels. We're happy that the dwelling is still in a state that it's not causing any visual harm to the area. So basically, the proposal is to retain what is there for another 5 years, because the dog kennel business is still viable and the worker is still required to be on site. As you can see from the report, we've had one objection from the people who live in Woodlands, where I showed you on the location plan. And I actually think from the objection that they might understand that there's actually another dwelling being placed on the site, but obviously that is not the case. Sorry, beg your pardon. I'm just trying to. There we are. They've objected on the grounds of excessive noise will occur. The agricultural tie prohibits this use, and there's insufficient electrical power in the national grid to serve more mobile homes. But actually there won't be any more noise other than what is already there. The agricultural tie doesn't prohibit this use because we've already granted planning permission on a temporary basis, which has now run out, which is why they've submitted this application. We don't have any evidence that there are electrical power issues associated with the occupation of this dwelling. And there's no increased need for any more electrical power to be provided. So that being the case, we're recommending approval, subject to the conditions, one of which is that this is another temporary permission for another 5 years, so that this permission can be reviewed again at that time. And that's all I'll say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lee, for that report there, Teresa. So no speakers on this item, so I'm going to call Councillor Edwards to start the debate, please.
Thank you. I've just got 2 questions surrounding this. How many times can something come up at planning for temporary planning permission before it has to come for permanent planning permission? And the second question is, are we 100% sure that that accommodation is being used by somebody who needs to be there, that works on the dog boarding business? Have we actually checked it? Is there a way that we can check it?
Thank you for that, Councillor. Teresa?
Yes. If we want, I mean, normally when you're looking at a new agricultural business in the open countryside, you might permit a temporary dwelling for, say, 3 years. And then if the business is viable, the applicant comes back and applies for a permanent dwelling. And if the business is viable, we would probably grant a permanent dwelling. There's nothing to stop them applying to retain what they've got. I mean, the issue really is it still required to service the business that's there? And because it's a temporary dwelling, does it still look all right within that countryside setting? The case officer has gone back to the agent, and this is partly why this application has taken a long while to come back, because we've got the evidence to show that the person living there is running the dog kennel business. He's part of the overall family that run that farm and the dog kennel business. We don't have any evidence that it's been let out to anybody else. And the evidence that's been submitted about the kennels shows that it's still a viable business. We've got no reason to query that. In terms of the visual appearance, it looks acceptable. It's single story. It's set well back from the road. It doesn't really cause any visual harm. If either of those 2 circumstances do change, then next time, if they apply for it again, we might make a different recommendation. But at the moment, we're satisfied that they have demonstrated a continuing need for it, and visually it's not causing any particular harm to either the countryside or any neighbours.
Just a quick comeback on that. So there is no law to say that once a building has been there for so many years, whether it's got temporary or permanent, it can become permanent. Nothing at all.
No. If someone puts a dwelling up without planning permission and it's there for 4 years, it would become lawful. But because we are, it's subject of a planning permission, and we are restricting it by condition, then once that 5 years is up, unless they've applied again to either extend it further, then the condition requires that the dwelling's removed and the land is reinstated. So it can't become lawful.
Lovely, thank you.
Okay, thanks for clarifying there. Councillor Deering, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I do have a problem, I'm afraid, with this, Teresa. I note on page 3 of this that the applicant was also advised on the 30th of October last year by an officer of the local planning authority that it expired in December last year. Then we go on to say, providing a valid planning application was received before this date, then consideration could be given to an extension in the time for a mobile home to remain on site. So my question really is, why has this not been followed up since December last year? And therefore, had it been followed up, presumably this would have been removed, but it hasn't been.
Thank you, Councillor. Teresa.
Because they did submit the application, it unfortunately just taken a long time for us to deal with the application for various reasons. So they did submit the application in time, but it's taken an unfortunate amount of time to actually get the application before you at committee.
Well, if I might, Chair, that's taken an awful long time to come through if they submitted it prior to December last year. That's 11 months and really shouldn't be taking this length of time. That aside, if we accept this as another 5-year extension, what's to stop them doing exactly the same again?
Well, if it comes in next time and we're not happy with it, and we don't negotiate with them over the things that are missing, then we could recommend refusal next time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor and Teresa. So no further hands raised. Does anyone else wish to comment on this item before I move to the vote? No. Okay. So we've got an officer's recommendation to approve the application. Can I seek a proposer and seconder, please?
I'll propose.
Councillor Adams and Councillor Mitchell. Thank you. So Eden, over to you for the vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. If we go in the same order as last time, so Councillor Rowley.
He's left the meeting.
Oh, of course he has. Sorry, apologies, Chair. Councillor Edwards then.
4.
Councillor Mitchell.
4.
Councillor Adams.
4.
Councillor Deering.
4.
Councillor Titcombe. Councillor O'Hara.
4.
Councillor Morton.
4.
Perfect. That's everyone, Chair, and that is unanimous.
Thank you very much, Eden. So that application is therefore approved. So that concludes our business this evening at Planning Committee. Thanks everyone who's attended, contributed.